Okay, I think we should go ahead and get the festivities underway. Just a reminder then, next Tuesday we have our next little written exercise. And so this one would start with cells. And so we would have, all the organelles and that sort of thing. We would have then cell cycle, which would deal with mitosis and meiosis. And the material on metabolism, which would include, of course, glycolysis, Krebs cycle, oxidative phosphorylation, and then the material we had showing, the interconvertibility of lipids to energy and carbohydrates to lipids and proteins and all that stuff. And the DNA, material like transcription, translation. Remember that, the DNA problem like we did the last time. And, I'm sure we will have one of those. And be similar to what we did. And I will give you, of course, a codon chart to use. So it's just a matter of remembering what to do.
What was the interconvertibility thing?
Well, that was the business, like excess carbohydrates can be converted into lipids, and lipids back into, in like acetyl-CoA and glycerol. You can plug that into glycolysis or into the Krebs cycle and get energy from it. Okay, it was
that big thing on the board.
Yeah, it was written on the board.
The diagram.
Yes. Well, there was a slide.
The picture, yeah.
But actually, the board is better probably because that made that slide too hard to read. It's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. But anyway, there's that. And then the integumentary system. And so we have a bit to finish with integumentary system. And so we'll start with this slide, which really is kind of a repeat of something I think we ended with last time, and that is the ceruminous glands. So, where do you find these? In your ears, right. The auditory hiatus is where you find them. That's the only place you find them. And the material they produce is, of course, called cerumen, which is a waxy material. And that's what we commonly refer to as earwax. And of course, I think everybody's familiar with that one. So, there you go. Now, even though they're modified sweat glands, they're producing more of a lipid-like material. It has a waxy character to it. And the only place you're going to find them is in the external auditory hiatus of canal. That's it. Okay? All right, so there we go. Now, skin color, that's where we really need to start today. And when it comes to color of skin, it is really related to three factors. Number one is melanin. Melanin is the typical pigment that gives skin its color. So if you're light complected, dark complected, depends really on how much melanin you've got. Melanin also is responsible for the color of your eyes, the color of your hair, as we shall see when we get to those areas. That's one of the things, but it's certainly not the only thing. We also have carotene. Carotene is an orange-colored pigment, and of course you're all familiar with carrots. Beta-carotene is the primary pigment you find there. And we have it as well, and it is largely going to be distributed to the fat areas of the body. Adipose tissues, adipocytes, are going to contain carotene. And in the skin, where do you find adipocytes? What areas of the skin are they located in? Well, are they in the epidermis? No. Are they in the dermis? Yes, some, but most of it is down in the subcutaneous tissue. There's a lot of fat there. And so you're going to find that orangey carotene there. And then the third thing, and the one that a lot of people don't think of, but it probably is one of the more important ones, and that's blood. The blood that's in the capillaries of the dermis, and the blood that you also find in the subcutaneous areas, gives a lot of color to your skin. Have you ever, well, I doubt you have, but if you've ever seen a corpse, how do they look? Pale, kind of yellow, or orangey rather, kind of an orangey waxy look to it a lot of times. Because there's no blood, it's drained away, you know. So there you go. So, you know, it really, that healthy glow that you have, that's the blood. All right, so there we go. Now, melanin. Melanin is produced by specialized cells called melanocytes. Melanocytes are the cells that actually produce it. And it is found, these cells are found down in the stratum bacilli or just below the stratum bacilli of the skin. And of course, when we're talking about stratum bacilli, where is that located? That's the lower levels of the epidermis, right? That's the cells that are right there bordering on the basement membrane. Okay? All right, now another thing about these melanocytes. They take the amino acid tyrosine and they convert it into melanin. And it's really due largely to the enzyme tyrosinase, which you find in the melanocytes. All right? So, melanocytes take the amino acid tyrosine and, by way of the action of tyrosinase enzyme, convert it into melanin. And melanin is black. All right? So, there you go. And these melanocytes then export that melanin largely through long processes or extensions of their membrane. And these processes are actually located between other cells in the stratum bacilli and the stratum spinosum. And so the melanin is packaged up into secretory vesicles in the melanocytes. These secretory vesicles then pass through the cytoplasm and thus into the extensions of the cytoplasm. And then is expelled from the melanocyte by exocytosis, a process that we've long since talked about. And then it is taken up by phagocytosis by the other cells in the stratum bacilli and the stratum spinosum. And of course, melanin, since it is black, it stains the cells. And the more melanin they take up, the darker they're going to be. Now, you may think that individuals who have dark complexions would have more of these cells than those who are a lighter complexion, but that really isn't the case, because when it comes to the melanocytes, we'll come back to that in a minute, virtually everyone has the same number. It's just that individuals who have darker pigmented skin produce more melanin than those with, with lighter colored skin. So it's the amount of melanin you produce, but the number of melanocytes the same. And really, even those who have albinism or albinos, well, they probably have the cells, they just don't produce melanin. Okay? And we'll talk more about that one here in a bit. All right, here we have a diagram. This is the basement membrane. This purple line along here would be the basement membrane. So this would be the stratum bacilli, and here's one of these melanocytes. And you notice it has these processes that extend out between the other cells here in the stratum bacilli and in the stratum spinosum. And the black little dots that you see there, well, those would be the secretory granules or vesicles rather in the melanocyte. Those are released from the cell by way of exocytosis, and then by way of phagocytosis, that melanin is taken up by the cells. And the more melanin they accumulate, the darker they're going to be. So, someone who has a darker complexion is simply going to accumulate more melanin because they're producing more of it. And those that are lighter, well, they don't make as much. Now, in this cell diagram, we see highlighted here the Golgi apparatus. Now, I wonder why and that would be highlighted there. What's the purpose of the Golgi apparatus? What does it do? It makes those secretory vesicles, doesn't it? Right? That's where the stuff that's to be secreted gets packaged up in the vesicles. So any cell that is actively secreting things, like these melanocytes, probably going to have a very well-developed or highly developed Golgi apparatus. Okay? You know, if the cell is releasing things, you know, either as an African cell would or American cell, which we haven't talked about yet, but we will, don't worry. So it's giving off these little vesicles. You're going to have to make them. It's the Golgi apparatus, obviously, that does that. All right, so there we go. Now, keep in mind where these cells are located, because we'll be talking later about malignant melanoma, which is actually a tumor cell derived from those. Here is an electron micrograph of a section of a melanocyte. And I'm going to have, do we need to cut the lights a bit? It probably wouldn't hurt. And my light dimmer isn't with us today. I don't know where she is, but anyhow. Better know that we missed her. Well, we do. All right. Well, for other reasons too. All right. Now, she's very pleasant and all that. And she answers questions too when I ask. All right. And there's the nucleus, and then all these little vesicles that you see in there, they're dark because the melanin, which is dark, is very electron dense. And, you know, of course, remember, electron micrographs are monochrome, they're black and white. And so color has to be added, highlight things. But in any event, you know, there you can see the cell producing the melanin. All right, and so there we go. Now, why do you tan in the summertime? Well, the ultraviolet radiation from the sun stimulates the activity of tyrosinase enzyme, so that will enhance the production of melanin. Now, why would you want to have your skin darken in the summer when you're exposed to the sun? Well, melanin has a practical purpose. All right, melanin is going to help protect the nuclei of the cells of the skin from ultraviolet radiation damage. UV radiation causes mutations in the nuclei of cells. All right? Now, what do we mean by mutation? Well, it's altering the DNA nucleotide sequence is really what it is. That's exactly what it is. All right? Altering the nucleotide sequence of DNA. That's a mutation. Now, what effect does that have? Well, what happens when you get ready to make proteins? That DNA is going to undergo transcription, right, to make a complementary messenger RNA. All right? Now, where does that messenger RNA go once it's formed? Out to the cytoplasm, where it links up with a ribosome and undergoes the process of translation into an amino acid sequence, right? Okay, now let's go back to the DNA. If you altered the nucleotide sequence of the DNA, what effect is that going to have on the messenger RNA that's transcribed from it? It's going to be changed, that's right. It's altered. It's not what was originally intended, but something a little different. Now, that messenger RNA, that altered messenger RNA, links up with the ribosome, and we undergo the translation process. And what's likely to happen as translation proceeds? Different amino acids, right, get inserted, so the sequence of amino acids is altered. Well, now what was the structure of proteins that was based on the number and sequence of amino acids. What was that called? The basis for all the rest of it. The primary structure, right? Primary structure of a protein. Alright, so if you put in a different amino acid sequence, you have altered the primary structure of the protein. Okay? Well, if you've done that, what happens to the secondary structure of the protein, I wonder? It's messed up too. That's right. Nice way to put it. It's altered. And remember, the secondary was where the protein chain kind of folded up into either the beta pleated sheet or the alpha helix type conformation. And then those pleated sheets and those helices started folding and bending on themselves, and you ended up with a tertiary structure, which was an overall three-dimensional shape. Now, what was the importance of that three-dimensional shape business?
Its function.
Function, right. The function is determined by the shape. So if you've altered the DNA, you've altered the messenger RNA that's transcribed from it, you've altered probably the amino acid sequence when translation occurs, so that alters the primary structure of the protein, which in turn has altered the secondary structure, which in turn has altered the tertiary structure or the shape, and thus the function. And you may now end up with a protein that either doesn't work at all or has an altered function in some respect. Okay? And UV radiation can do that. And if you have the right combination of mutations, well, you may have transformed that cell from something that is reasonably normal into something that's very abnormal, like a tumor cell. You don't want that. All right? So that melanin, and you noticed in that melanocyte that we had up there a while ago, how a lot of those melanin vesicles were clustered around the nucleus, you know, almost like putting little parasols or umbrellas around it to help shading it. Okay, well there you go. All right, so it has a very practical use. And if you look in the world, where do you find folks who have darker complexions? They tend to be in more sun-drenched climates, like closer to the equator. And those that are, let's say, in Scandinavia, well, they tend to have very pale complexions because they're not getting a lot of sun. And why do we need the sun in the first place? What does it do for us? Vitamin D. Oh, excellent. I'm so proud that you all remembered that. Good. There you go. And of course, in the wintertime, you're not out exposed to as much UV radiation. You don't want a dark complexion then because you want to be able to make the vitamin D, based on the sun exposure you're getting. In the summertime, well, you're making more of it, and you can actually shade the cells a little bit more with a little more melanin to protect them. Now, UV radiation does not penetrate deeply, to be honest. Paper, a sheet of paper, and that's an experiment that when you get to microbiology you'll probably do, that you'll notice if you just lay a card over a culture plate, that it shades the organisms that you see there from the UV radiation. They just keep growing, the same as though you've done nothing to them. And you have some that are maybe on half the plate that's openly exposed to it, and they're dead. And it didn't take much to do them in. So, there you go. So, there we have it. Now, albinism, albinos. Well, they produce little to no melanin. Now, there are varying degrees of this. And a lot of times these folks may have melanocytes. They just don't work. They don't have the tyrosinase activity. All right, and what do you find here? Well, typically what you find is something like this. And I don't think this is the greatest photo I've ever seen. But typically, their skin complexion is just really light pink. You know, it has that pink glow to it. This is due to the blood. Blood and keratin, that's all that's giving them any kind of pigmentation. Because they don't have any melanin. All right? Their eyes are usually very pale. I can't say that I ever saw anyone that had pink eyes, but anyhow, like New Zealand rabbits do. But, you know, those are the nice, you know, the white bunnies with the pink nose and the pink eyes. Milk Easter's coming, you know, so anyhow. But anyway, and their hair is usually white. And again, melanin, as we're going to see, is responsible for pigmentation of hair. And if they're not making it, well, you know, they're just going to have white hair. And there, you know, there you go. Usually, too, they tend to have weak eyesight. So, you know, I don't want to get into that. But anyhow, it's a recessive disorder, I guess. Well, I don't know. I don't want to call it a disorder, but anyway, it's recessive. You have to get the gene from each parent, and you know, so you know, you could have parents who each have the normal pigment gene, the albino gene, and they're normally pigmented, and they may have all their children being normally pigmented, and there just may be one that isn't. I mean, you know, because you have to get that albino gene from each one. So, you know, that's maybe only about a 1 in 4 chance in such a situation. So, anyhow, you know, there you go. Freckles. Well, freckles are really just due to a maldistribution of melanin. There are areas here, there's extra melanin. Okay, there you go. And some people may have like whitish patches, like in vitiligo and things of that sort. Well, those are just areas where they're not producing melanin. Okay. Hair follicles. Well, hair is formed at the base of the follicles by the division of epithelial cells, again, specialized epithelial cells, and as these cells are pushed up higher and higher, they die. The papilla is the region of the hair follicle, the base of the hair follicle, where the hair cells are actively growing. All right? And so, as the older cells get pushed up away from that papillary area, that papillary area, we'll get it out eventually, they get further away from the blood supply. The blood vessels are strictly there at the base of the hair follicle. So, as they get farther away, fewer nutrients, and what happens to the poor things? They starve to death. And just like the cells up in the stratum corneum that are quite dead, they're just flat and they're just filled with keratin. And so, since I like my food images, we'll see a slide here in a bit of an electron micrograph of the hair shaft. I think it looks like a stack of keratin-filled pancakes. Really. All right. Hair grows maybe a millimeter every 3 days or so. That varies. I think I've heard that February is the month when it tends to grow the fastest.
Are you serious? Oh,
yes.
real
There's a couple months when it does tend to grow faster.
Why?
Don't ask me. I don't know. But I ever saw an explanation for it. But
so weird.
well, yeah, and then, you know, then how it falls out is weird, too. That isn't constant either. I wouldn't worry about these numbers. The millimeter, I forget that, forget the 700. Some of us have accelerated loss, you know. Although that was in the past. I did have hair once upon a time. But anyhow, there it goes. That's also genetically determined too, you know, the loss and that sort of thing. Well, actually what happens are the hair follicles die, and then you just stop making it. All right, now, associated with hair follicles is a bundle of smooth muscle cells that are called the erector pili muscles. Erector pili muscle. Now, hair follicles actually grow at an angle. All right? And the erector pili muscle is attached to the hair follicle. It's also attached to the epidermis. And when it contracts, it straightens the hair follicle. All right? And when it straightens the hair follicle, that's going to wrinkle up the surface of the epidermis. All right? Now, what do we get as a result of that? We end up getting goosebumps. Goosebumps result from the contraction of those erector pili muscles. They straighten the hair follicle, and that, as a result, wrinkles, if you will, the epidermis. Now, smooth muscle, as we recall from lab, is it voluntary or involuntary? It's involuntary. You don't have conscious control over it. When you get chilled, these erector pili muscles tend to contract under nervous stimulation, obviously. And that straightens the hair follicles, wrinkles up the epidermis, produces goosebumps. What's the benefit? Well, you have now less surface area presented to the surrounding air or water. All right? Less surface area, less loss of heat by radiation. All right? Less radiational loss of heat. Where in the skin would heat be coming from? How would it be getting there? Well,
By the capillaries?
right. Most of the heat that we feel on the surface of the skin is due to radiation of heat coming from the capillaries in the dermis. Okay? So if you wrinkle up the skin, and you have less surface area, there's less area through which radiational loss of heat can occur. All right? There you go. And when you form goosebumps, when you get chilled, or you get, you turn around, the crocodile is behind you with his gaping jaws ready to have you for lunch, or something like that. But in any event, there you go.
Can you get goosebumps on your face?
Not that I'm aware of.
I swear I started getting goosebumps on my face. Like I'd go outside and it'd get really cold and then I'd get goosebumps on my face and then it would go away. Like real
Well,
fast.
yeah, I mean, well, your face.
But that's never happened
I thought you said
before.
your feet.
No, my face.
Oh,
That never used to
okay.
happen.
No,
And then,
yes,
like,
your
the older I
face,
get-
sure. I mean, yes.
The older I get, the fewer things that happen.
Well, see, that's another thing of the aging process.
It's so
is your
weird.
hearing ability kind of starts to decline. All right, so there you go. Now, yes, you can get them in lots of places, but as I said, no, I never. Anyway, all right, so there you go. Now, there's some other adaptations here, too. If you get chilled, what else is going to happen besides the goosebumps? Well, think of the capillaries. They're going to constrict. All right, and that restricts the flow of blood to the surface. And again, that's a way of minimizing the loss of heat by radiation. Because you just don't have the heat there to radiate away. Okay? Now, another thing that can happen, and that is shivering, but now that's not skin. That's the underlying skeletal muscles, and we'll talk more about that later. But if you get chilled, what's the skin going to do? You're going to get the goosebumps, which decreases surface area, and cuts down on radiational loss, and you restrict the flow of blood through those constriction of those dermal capillaries, and that also holds the heat in so it's not being lost by radiation. All right, so there you go. All right, and if we take a look at this diagram, here we have a hair follicle. There's a papillary region here at the base, and in close proximity to it are the blood vessels. There would be capillaries here that would be supplying, of course, nutrients to these cells, which are actively dividing. They're basically epithelial cells. And as new cells are formed, the older ones get pushed up away from the papilla, and thus the blood supply. So they're being deprived now of nutrients, they're being starved, and they just die, flatten out, and just simply become containers of keratin. And so you just have that stack of dead keratinized cells emerging as the hair shaft itself. Here is one of these erector pili muscles. That would be a bundle of smooth muscle. It's attached to the hair follicle. It's also attached up here to the epidermis. When it constricts, it basically changes the angle of that, making it more straight, which in turn wrinkles, if you will, the surface of the epidermis, decreasing the surface area that's presented in the surrounding environment. And here we have sebaceous glands. Remember, those are the ones that secrete the sebum, and they are typically associated with hair follicles in most areas of the body, where the sebum is secreted into the follicle and emerges with the hair shaft on the surface. And then over here is an example of an eccrine sweat gland. And remember, those are the ones that are not associated with hairs. They secrete their product through a duct that rises all the way up to the surface. And these are the coiled tubular glands, remember, okay? And, they are the apical or apical type glands where the apex of the cell is pinching off and taking the perspiration that's produced with it as it breaks down. And then, of course, the fat that we have down here in the dermis and subcutaneous tissues. All right, so, there we go with that. And here we have a photomicrograph showing a couple hair follicles. There's a sebaceous gland associated with this one. This one has actually a hair shaft in it. This one, I don't think it does. It's like it's off. Up here is the epidermis. And so all this is dermis, where you'll find the hair follicles themselves. And then we have this view. This is what I like to think of as stacked carrots and pancakes, because look how it looks like. There's an old dead cell, and here's one on top of it, and here's another one, and it's just like a stack of these dead cells, and they're really just nothing but containers of keratin and pigment. Now, there will be pigment here as well, unless you're looking at white hair, which really doesn't have much, if any. And here is another photomicrograph. This is actually showing the papillary area, the hair papilla. There would be blood vessels, are not that evident here, down in this region. These are the cells that are actively dividing. And as you notice, as they get pushed up, you stop seeing any real detail because they're now dying off, flattening out, and just becoming that stack of dead, flat, keratinized cells. And you notice there's lots of adipose around here. These are blood vessels here and here. So anyway, there you go. And let's see. Oh, and the next one, sebaceous glands. Remember, the sebaceous glands were holocrine glands. Remember what that meant? Right, the whole cell dies, breaks off, dies, and breaks down, and releases the product. And if you notice, there's a lot of cells here, and you notice the nuclei, some of them show signs of active division, others, the nucleus is starting to condense, like the cell is dying off, and remember now, if it's a holocrine type gland, it's going to have a lot of cells, it's got to produce a lot of cells, because as it releases product, it loses cells. That's how the product is lost. Here is a kind of oblique section from a hair follicle. You see it's sort of an oval shape, so that would have been cut at an angle probably in order to show that. All right, so there we have some interesting slides, I think. Now, when it comes to hair color, again, it's a matter of pigmentation, and the principal pigment is melanin. So, melanin is black. So if you have black hair, it has a lot of melanin in it. If it's brown, it has somewhat less. All right? And then blonde is even less. Gray is even less yet. And white, basically, there isn't any. Okay? Red hair is really two pigments involved there. Melanin and triglycerin. And triglycerin is an iron-containing pigment. Now, what color is rust? It's reddish, isn't it? Well, ferric ions are red, like ferric oxide, which is primarily what we're talking about with rust. So there you go. So it's a balance really of melanin and triglycerin if you have reddish hair. And we're talking about natural red hair, not that stuff that looks like a Raggedy Ann doll. That's obviously out of the bottle. But anyhow. Alright, so there we go. Now, hair is made of keratin. That's really what it is. And nails are made of keratin as well. Alright? Now, which is harder, hair or nails? Nails, obviously. Alright, why? Well, the harder the keratin, the more cysteine residues it contains. Cysteine is an amino acid. And it forms disulfide bonds, sulfur to sulfur bonds. And the more of these disulfide bonds that you have, the harder the keratin. The hardest keratin is tortoiseshell. Alright? Tortoiseshell is the hardest. Horns. That's a little softer, not much. It's pretty hard too. Feathers and hair would be very soft. Nails, a little harder than feathers, nails, and things like that. Than feathers and hair, I should say. But in any event, there you go. And so, another interesting thing too about cysteine. I don't know, does anybody have permanent anymore? Is that out of style? I mean, that was something I remember from, because see, I'm old. Women were always getting permanent waves, you know.
It smelled so bad.
Yes, it does. Now, you know, a lot of it happens. Well, what you're doing with it, and the thing too, if you use the straightening, you know, like to straighten your hair, it's the same kind of principle. Well, you use two different solutions. One would have, I think it's mercaptan ethanol, which is also found in skunk scent. But anyway, one of them would actually break the disulfide bonds, so you could either curl or straighten the hair, and then the other one would put them back, but they wouldn't be put back in the same place. They'd be in a different place, so that would maintain the curl, or else, you know, take it out. That kind of thing. I mean, that was essentially how it works. And I'm not old. I know there's mercaptan ethanol and something. I don't remember which it is, but it stinks, of course, because that's related to skunk sound. But anyway, but that was the idea. It was, I mean, you know, you break the disulfide bonds and then you reform new ones where you want them to form. So that'll maintain a curl, or as I said, if you were straightening, then, you know, it would maintain that. Because naturally curly hair has this disulfide bonds already in place where most folks, I guess, want them. But I don't know, maybe everybody doesn't. Whatever. But anyhow, there you go. Now, 3 areas to a nail. There's the nail plate of the body. That's the visible part. Okay? So, you know, there you go. And then we have the free edge. That's the distal part. That's the part you file and trim. Okay? I don't know. Some people may paint it too. I don't know. But anyway, whatever. And then there's the nail bed. And that is the proximal area back next to the finger. That is where the cells are actively growing and dividing. And here again, we're looking at essentially epithelial cells. Epithelial cells rapidly multiply. All right, where's the blood supply? Back here at the proximal end. So as the cells get pushed further away toward the distal end, what happens to them? They starve to death, flatten out, and there you are. Stacks of keratinized cells, dead keratinized cells, and there it is. So, as we said, the growth starts back here at the proximal end, and as the cells push forward, they get further away from the nutrients, from the blood supply, and they die, and that's it. The lunula is the area actually of the most active growth. That's the so-called half-moon thing. I can still see them on my thumbs, but on most of my fingers, they've almost disappeared. But again, that's a sign of age. I'm old. Well, there's no sense pretending otherwise. All right, so there we go. And so here we are. So distal end out here, there's the plate, back here is the area where the cells are actually growing. And then as they're pushed further away from the nutrients, they die, and that's it. And then you just really have nothing but dead, flat, keratinized cells stacked up. And there you go. Now, one other thing too about cysteine, just for kicks, have you ever singed your hair? You know what it smells like? Or you ever singed feathers? Well, it's that sulfur smell. That's because of the cysteine. All right. Now, temperature regulation. Well, we talked a bit about this. If you get hot, you tend to perspire. Now, what's the sense in that? Well, perspiration leads to evaporation of water. And evaporation leads to cooling. Evaporation is a cooling process. Now, why? Well, now let's just imagine that we have a little puddle of water of the imagination sitting here somewhere. What kind of interparticle forces do you find between closely spaced adjacent water molecules in that case? Bless you. Hydrogen bonds, right. Now, those water molecules are not static. They are actually moving with respect to each other. And when we talk about energy of motion, we talk about kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is energy that particles have when they're in motion. And kinetic energy is directly proportional to temperature. The higher the temperature, the higher the kinetic energy, the faster they're moving. All right? Now, in that puddle of water, we can talk about an average kinetic energy, right? Just like in class, when we have a test, we have an average score, right? But did everybody make the average score? No. Some people did better, and some people did worse, and some people were probably right on the average. All right, so you've got a variety. Well, the same thing's true with those water molecules in that puddle of water. Some of them have higher kinetic energy, higher temperature, faster motion than others. Some of them have such high kinetic energy, they move so far that they get far enough from the neighbors that the hydrogen bonds break. What happens to those? They leave the liquid phase and they enter the gaseous phase. They become water vapor. They're gone. What did they take with them when they left? Their heat, their temperature. So what happens to the average temperature of all those molecules that are left behind? It goes down. That's cooling, is it not? Isn't that neat? Now, I'm sure you've all rubbed some rubbing alcohol on your skin somewhere, maybe on the back of your hand. What do you notice about that area in a few seconds or a minute or so later? What happens to it? It feels dry and cool, doesn't it? It's cooler, right? Why? The alcohol molecules evaporated. What did they take with them when they left? Heat. Where did they get the heat? From your skin, largely out of that heat coming from the capillaries in the dermis, right? So if you're hot, how's the body going to compensate? What kind of homeostatic processes are going to be involved? Well, we got to have a receptor, right, that senses the fact your elevated temperature. All right, impulses are going to come out from the brainstem to effectors. And remember, in homeostatic mechanisms, what are the two kinds of effectors? In fact, I recall asking that on the first exam. Muscles and glands. Excellent. Now, what kind of muscles are involved here? The erector pili muscles. Well, they're not likely to do much if you're hot, right? But what else is likely to become activated greatly? Glands. What glands do you have in the skin that are probably going to start secreting more rapidly? No. Sudoriferous glands or sweat glands, right? You're going to increase your production of perspiration. That's going to come pouring out onto the surface of the skin. What is perspiration? Well, what are the major components in it? Water is the biggie, right? Yeah, you've got salts and you've got glucose and ammonia and you've got urea and all that stuff. But it's mostly water. So what happens without water out on the surface of the skin? It's picking up heat and it's evaporating. And when it evaporates, what does it take with it? Heat. So what effect does it have on the skin? Cools it down, and as a result, cools the body down. Okay, to some extent, it's cooling. Now, let's go to the opposite. You get chilled. What happens there? All right, you're losing heat. What's the body going to do to hang on to it? Goosebumps would be one. And what else? Constrict the capillaries. And what else? What about the sudoriferous glands? Are they going to be stimulated? No, they're not going to be stimulated. They're not going to be pouring out gobs of perspiration. Right? There you go. Now, isn't that simple? Now, see, that's just common sense in many respects, isn't it? Right, and there you go. I mean, muscles and glands, those are the effectors of homeostasis, homeostatic mechanisms. There they are in action. Now, isn't that neat? Yes. It's simple. Don't make something complicated out of it now. Now, let's say a few words about pathology or diseases of the skin. And we're only going to pick a few things. Let's start with burns. All right, now as you well know, we can say there are first, second, and third degree burns. Well, what's the difference? Well, first degree is the mildest. It's what we can call a partial thickness burn. Now, what areas are involved? The epidermis and the dermis, to some extent. That's about it. What kinds of symptoms go along with a first-degree burn? Redness, right? Heat. All right, maybe some pain. All right. Now, what areas are involved here? The epidermis and just like the capillary region of the dermis, that upper part of the dermis. All right. There's damage there. Redness and heat largely due to the fact you've got dilation of capillaries. So there's more blood entering the area. And blood, it gives off heat, obviously, because the red cells generating heat as they metabolize glucose. And blood is red. So if you've got more blood flowing through an area, it's going to make it more red. Well, there you go. There's a first-degree burn. Damage, quickly repaired typically. Think about like a sunburn maybe. Find like a mild sunburn. You notice the redness. You notice the heat, some pain. How long does it last? Few days. Done. Remember now the epidermis, it's epithelial cells that replicate very rapidly. You know, so the damaged cells quickly replaced. The damaged ones peel off, you know, you get that peeling effect. Alright, there you go. Now, if we have then second degree burn, it's a deeper partial thickness burn. Again, epidermis, dermis. But now we're going deeper into the dermis, not just the papillary region. Alright, so there we go. Now, what happens here? Heat, redness, pain, a lot of times fluid-filled blisters. Where'd the fluid come from, I wonder? Tissue fluids collecting, right? Where's tissue fluid originate? Blood. Alright, probably damaged some of the capillaries. You've got extra fluids coming out. Alright, and there you go. Third degree, full thickness. Epidermis, dermis, maybe even parts of subcutaneous tissues are actually burned away. Eroded. So you've got areas now in the body where there really is no skin. Well, what happens as a result? What does skin do for you anyway? Well, protects you from infections, that's one thing. Alright, so if you've eroded away the skin because it was burned away, there's an area where you could easily get an infection. Alright, what else? Temperature, moisture, right, and nutrients, right. You could be losing fluids and electrolytes and nutrients, right. Fluids dripping and oozing out. Not good if you've eroded large areas of the skin. You know, you may end up going into shock and circulatory collapse. That isn't nice. Okay? Alright, so there you go. And not only that, a lot of the accessories of the skin have been destroyed too. Hair is gone. Nerves are gone. You know, why might someone who's just experienced a third degree burn not be in such pain? Because the nerves are gone. They have no sensation. Alright? For a while, anyway. Alright, so it's quite devastating. Now, estimating the degree of burn surface area is related to the so-called rule of nines. It's a way to estimate how much of the surface area has actually been burned. And it is important for maintaining fluid and electrolyte balance, because remember, if you've eroded away the skin, and this is of course going to be very important in third degree burns in particular, you know, the individual is not able to maintain proper fluid and electrolyte balance, and that has to be compensated. So it basically divides the body up in these 9% regions, and here we have a couple of diagrams. Now, I don't know that you need to sit down and just memorize all of that, but I think you should be fairly familiar with it, because I can imagine there's probably going to be a question about this, don't you suspect? All right. Now, as you can see, the anterior of the head and neck, that's 4.5% virtually, you know, essentially. Posterior, 4.5%. So if the entire head and neck, anterior, posterior, was burned, 9%, right? Just add the numbers together. All right, like the arm. Anterior, 4.5%, posterior, 4.5%. Put them together, what do you got if you burn the whole arm? 9%. Both arms, front and back, 18%. See how easy that is. All right. Legs, I think it's like 9% anterior, 9% posterior, because there's more surface area there than there would be in the case of the arms. And so, you know, there you go. So just keep that in mind. All right. The rule of nines. Now, cuts. Well, everybody's experienced that. Now, if you just scrape the skin, you probably just scrape off some of the epidermis, right? And that's epithelial tissue, and that grows back very, very quickly. But what if you go deeper and you cut not only through the epidermis, but down into the dermis as well? What's going to happen? What do you notice when you cut your finger? It bleeds. Well, isn't that nice? Here we go. Now, I like to use the example when I was about 8 years old. I was riding my bicycle rather rapidly down a gravel road, and for some reason one of the pedals flew off, and it was a fairly new bicycle too. I lost my balance and over and scraping my forearm, and a few nice little gashes, and blood all over the place and everything, but that's all right, it soon stops. Now, what happens? All right, here we are, before, after, gash, and there are blood vessels cut open and blood comes gushing out. And remember now, what's going to happen with that blood once it contacts the damaged tissues? It's going to clot. And remember, blood clots, is that a negative or a positive feedback mechanism? Positive feedback. See, you paid attention. Good. All right, clots. Scabs over, dries off, you know, its proteins dry, and that helps keep moisture in. Now, what happens down in there to repair the damage? Well, one of the first things that's going to happen is this area is going to get infiltrated with fibroblasts laying down a network of collagen fibers. Now, collagen fibers replacing damaged tissue. That's called scar tissue. Scarring is essentially an accumulation of collagen fibers, dense connective tissue. Okay? Well, that's largely what the dermis is, right? There's also some elastic fibers in there, and, you know, and then blood vessels. Well, those will, you know, grow back into it fairly often, fairly simple, fairly early on, too. All right, so there we go. And then the epidermis starts to grow back over the top of that scar tissue, right? Epidermis grows fairly rapidly. And then eventually what you end up with is the area is repaired. It's back to normal. You have the epidermis, and you have then the dermis fully reestablished. Okay? And that's it. Scarring first, and then that's replaced, if it can be, with normal tissues. Now, if you're in the brain or somewhere where you've got cells that don't regenerate, well, you just simply end up with a scar, and that's it. Or the heart, places like that. Okay, but anyway, in a cut, usually repaired fairly well. You wouldn't even know where that happened because the scar is gone. Okay, but it was there for a few years. It took a little while to do it, but anyhow, it did. Now, tumors. Well, squamous cell carcinoma is the first one on the list. And carcinoma, when you hear that term, remember, carcinomas are tumors of epithelial origin. Epithelial origin. So if it's a carcinoma, it is derived from an abnormal epithelial cell. And what turned it into an abnormal cell? Well, who knows? But if we're talking about the skin, it was probably overexposure to UV radiation, which probably damaged the nuclei of the cell, the nucleus of the cell, and it became a tumor cell. Now, this is the most common and least severe of the skin tumors. All right, what layers, I wonder, of the epidermis, and this would have started in the epidermis, what layers of the epidermis would have been responsible, I wonder, for this? Where would it have likely arisen? Would it likely been the stratum lucidum? Probably not. Why not? Yeah. Those are dead. The basilar layer, the stratum bacilli or the stratum spinosum, where you got live cells, that's probably where the problem started. All right? So you may have had a cell in that area, either the stratum bacilli or the stratum spinosum, that may have been overexposed to UV radiation, transformed into a tumor cell, starts multiplying and producing these tumor cells. Now, what are you going to see? Well, you're probably going to see some abnormal looking cells on the skin. You're going to have a lesion, let's say, where it has an abnormal shape or pigmentation. And what are you going to do to correct it? Well, it's just simply going to get cut out. Wide incision. Alright? And probably that's the end of it, as long as the tumor is removed before there's any evidence of penetration of the basement membrane. Because what about epithelial cells? They all have that basement membrane right in this case, the stratum bacilli, in the case of the skin. And if the basement membrane under the tumor is intact, and there's no evidence that any of the cells have penetrated through it, that's a good prognostic sign. The tumor hasn't spread, is probably the take-home message in that case. Alright? Now, kick it up a notch, and we have a basal cell carcinoma. And this is kind of similar. Again, probably the stratum bacilli, maybe the stratum spinosum would be where it started. And the sooner it's removed, the better. And again, yes, any of these can spread, they can metastasize if they penetrate or perforate the basement membrane. But they don't do that unless they've been there for quite some time, as a general rule. Okay? Alright, so there we go. So, now we come to the worst of the lot, and that's the malignant melanoma. Now, this is by far the most serious. This is a tumor that has arisen from melanocytes. Where do you find the melanocytes? Where were they located? What layer? Down the stratum bacilli, and sometimes even below it slightly. Well, what borders the stratum bacilli, the basement membrane? Alright, these are very close to the basement membrane, and they tend to break off, break apart, and perforate the basement membrane. And if they do, well, now we're down in the dermis. What's in the dermis? Lymph vessels and blood vessels. And what happens if these things get into the lymph of the blood? They spread. Alright, in fact, it usually happens early on. What kind of intercellular junctions do we find between adjacent skin cells that tend to stitch them together rather tightly? Tight junctions. Well, guess what these tumor cells probably don't have or don't have in abundance? Tight junctions. So they break apart very easily. Alright? And away they go. Well, you don't want that, because these things can then spread or metastasize to other areas of the body. And this one does, typically fairly early in its development. So that's why it is such a horrific sort of condition. This is one of the things that doesn't respond well to treatment, or it hasn't. Now, this is something that President Carter has, and supposedly he's doing very well with the medications on it. But anyway, that's a very recent development, because used to be, it just was not easy deal. Squamous cell, basal cell, malignant melanoma. Now, one of the things you notice, the abnormal coloring and shape of all these, this tends to have an elevated border around it. And it also looks like it's cracked and bled a little bit. You know, that's kind of, if something keeps bleeding and doesn't heal, that's kind of an indication you probably better have it checked out. And that is the melanoma. Now remember, melanoma, melanocyte tumor, melanocytes make what? Melanin. What's the color of melanin? Black. All right, they're probably going to be extremely dark, but they're not evenly pigmented. And as we note, we have what we can call the A, B, C, D, E's of melanoma. A is asymmetry. You know, you cover the thing up, the left half, the right half, they don't look like mirror images of each other. It's very irregular in shape. All right, border irregularity. You know, it's not smooth around the edge. It's usually going to have a notched-like appearance to it. All right, color. Usually it's not uniform. There will be darker and lighter areas within it. Probably some areas black, other areas maybe kind of red or brown. All right. And then diameter, usually it's bigger than 6 millimeters. 6 millimeters is about the size of a pencil eraser. Usually bigger than that. And then the E stands for evolution, which is that it changes over time. All right. And it usually gets bigger, and you know, and the shape and the color can change with time. All right, and of course, anything that looks at all suspicious should certainly be dealt with. And here's the other nasty thing too about these melanomas. You might think that they would tend to form on the areas that are more sun exposed. That's not necessarily the case. They sometimes form in areas that you normally have covered up. So, you know, it's very, you know, not a nice thing to contemplate. And, you know, and also, usually lighter skinned individuals are more susceptible to developing it than those with darker skin, but that's not always the case either. Because there certainly are documented cases where folks with very dark complexions have developed melanoma. So, you know, it's the biggest thing is don't be overexposed to the sun, and of course those cussed tanning beds. But anyway, all right, you can't have that. Get the spray. You know, do like one of the presidential candidates has been accused of such stuff. All right, acne. Well, acne is due to a blockage of sebaceous glands. The sebaceous glands become occluded, they become blocked. Sebum simply backs up. It spills off into the surrounding connective tissues, damages them. You've got inflammation, and there it is. And here we have acne vulgaris, as we would call it. And in fact, some of these may end up producing scarring when they resolve, as many and as severe as those are. Everybody has had some of this, of course. And when are you more susceptible to acne? Younger adolescents, usually, and then most folks tend to, you know, it dissipates as you age. So, there you go. Well, I think that will be enough for our written exercise, don't you?